Hi guys, welcome back to the Revive Stronger podcast. I'm your host, as always, Steve Hall, and today I have Brandon Kempter back on the show. He has now finished his contest season. Last time I spoke to Brandon, he was in the depths of contest prep, setting up for what was going to be a really fun season for him because he hasn't competed since 2019. We discussed the fact that he's gained over 4 kilos of muscle mass since he last competed, and as an already elite advanced natural bodybuilder, how he's continued to level up his physique over the long term. We also talk about the fact that he is now an IFBB Pro within the Natural Pro League that the IFBB have. We talk about what decisions he made to be able to accept that, what his thoughts are surrounding the IFBB, their 3-year natural status, and whether or not he's going to come back to the WNBF, and how all organizations can learn from one another to level up the natural bodybuilding scene, and much more, from everything from peaking strategies to his recovery post-show and how he's going to level up for his future competitions where he wants to progress within the IFBB Natural League. So guys, you're going to love this chat. This podcast is brought to you by MacroFactor, the smartest nutrition app on the market. Think of it like MyFitnessPal, but supercharged. It outperforms it in every single way. You just enter your details and goals, log your food, and wait. From there, MacroFactor fine-tunes your plan automatically, giving your body exactly what it needs to stay on track and reach your goals, without the guesswork. People often complain at how annoying and time-consuming tracking can be. Logging food has never been so effortless with MacroFactor. Due to their verified food database, you can log meals via barcode, search, or even a photo with their smart AI tech. It couldn't be any easier. So ditch the outdated apps and get with the times. Download MacroFactor today and use my code STRONGER to get 2 weeks completely free via the App Store or Google Play, or find it linked in the description below. Now with that said, let's get into today's show. Brandon, massive congratulations. I didn't actually say this off air. I need to say it now on air. Massive congratulations on your season as a whole, on the look that you brought, massively new and improved, but importantly, you're now an IFBB Pro, which is like the creme de la creme, to put it in those sort of terms. How does it feel? Has it sunk in yet?
It has finally sunk in. Honestly, it's been a pretty surreal season. As you're aware, when you come into a season, you come in with a vision, and that show in Taiwan, of which I was very gratefully awarded that pro card, that's where that vision came together. I remember being backstage, looking at my physique, going, I think this is bang on. So very happy with the overall look. To me, that's the most important piece. And the result on stage is a sort of bonus piece. Honestly, we can get into specifics, but the Taiwan show was fantastic. I'm not here for easy. I want to push the envelope, but I really felt that show was just start to finish. Everyone was a professional in the manner in which they presented their physique for body composition, but also the way they posed and conducted themselves. It was really, everyone was there for the W, which is great.
That, I know you mentioned in a post, it was like the most competitive, largest, kind of most prestigious, It felt like, competition you've done before. Do you think, I hate to kind of put it in these terms, but obviously you've done like a WNBF Worlds before, and for us as like on the natural side, that's like our Olympia in many ways. Do you feel like there's something that like the untested side of the sport, the IFBB, just do slightly, like they just do something, I don't want to say better, but different to the way that we like it's conducted on the WNBF or the natural tested side?
Look, make no mistake, I'm a huge fan of the WNBF. In fact, given my affiliation with the NPC, I probably shouldn't be wearing this shirt still, but still I don't know, I don't actually have any IFBB merch yet. But, look, I love the WNBF and what they bring to the table. I will say that WNBF Worlds is exceptionally underwhelming in terms of production quality, and I really think that's unfortunate. I've been to WNBF Australia, WNBF Malaysia, etc., and you've got light to sound, you've got backstage pin-loaded equipment to pump up on. I was very disappointed, to be honest. Both times I've been to Worlds with the production quality, fly across the world and put up 20 grand or something like that after you spend 3 weeks in the States, to have it in a hall or to have it in a school. I'm like, guys, come on, we could do better. And I do think that in other countries where WNBF hasn't been as well established, they're fighting hard for it. They don't rest on their laurels. The Malaysia show that we had last weekend, 300 competitors they had there. That was impressive. And the quality of production, amazing. Organization, amazing. Again, backstage, pin-loaded equipment, dumbbells to pump up on. I mean, awesome, let's go. So the WNBF elsewhere do really good. The IFBB, that Taiwan show, again, that was about 600 competitors over 2 days. And it was a theater, like multi-level theater. The lighting was amazing. The sound was surround sound. And this sort of thing goes a long way, I think. And they get in the backstage as well, have full dumbbell racks, fixed barbells, etc. And that really enhances the athlete experience because, it's like when you try to pump up on these crappy big W bands, it's not the same. So it's those little things that go a long way.
Yeah, well said actually, because I think that differentiates. It's not necessarily untested versus tested federations. It is very much up to the kind of promotion or the affiliate. For example, like the WNBF UK with Steph Noble, like I've been a big part of that, well, with judging at least, and it's really well run. The venues are really nice. Like the athletes are very well taken care of, and like you said, I've been done shows elsewhere and Worlds in 2024, which I recently did. I did feel a little bit underwhelmed with that too. Obviously, like from stage lighting to like the pump up backstage to organization of timelines, like when you do on stage, the communication to the athletes. And for a Worlds, that's where you kind of want the Worlds to be. That is the best production, and that represents that kind of federation at its best. So, like you said, it's something that the WMBF could improve upon. And I think the great thing, at least, not to make this discussion about this, but from what I understand, the different affiliates are learning from one another in different countries and how they're running it and getting that production value as high as possible. So hopefully, like we can learn from the Malaysias and things and take that on.
Hopefully, I mean, make no mistake, WNBF Worlds is the best for the quality of athlete. It's just straight up, it's ridiculous. But it definitely goes a long way when you as the athlete feel like, wow, like everything's just 100% on, organized, etc. Yeah.
On that note, from my understanding, the WNBF used to have a ruling where if you accepted a pro card elsewhere, you couldn't compete with the WNBF as a pro. But I believe they've actually redacted that. And now it's actually the IFBB, and you've accepted that pro card, you're going to go down that route. And now, as an IFBB, they're like, nah, you can't compete with others. You have to stick with us. You obviously made a post over on Instagram. You talked through your thoughts and feelings surrounding that. I'm sure you've got even more now. I'd love to hear kind of whether or not you're still going down that route. I imagine you are. And kind of, where your head is at with that decision.
Yeah, I do recall that rule from the WNBF. It was basically you could compete in any other federation but the IFBB. Or it was if you got a pro card in the IFBB, you can't come back. Any other federation is fine. So, but obviously that has been redacted. I did see, Bubba came back, and then you do it for one, you got to do it for all. But the IFBB do sort of claim ownership. The contract, which I'm actually yet to kind of sign, but it has a variety of kind of do's and don'ts, if you will. But that was definitely a tough piece. As I said in that video on Instagram, I planned out this entire season, myself and Daniel, really, really close friend of mine and colleague, and we did the Australian show, then we go to Taiwan, then we go to Malaysia. So Malaysia was all booked, done. I'm still in Malaysia at the moment. I'd planned to do the show and then spend a week with my wife and have a bit of downtime. And then winning the pro card wasn't something we sort of banked on. Nothing's guaranteed. And then we decided, okay, well, what are we going to do? We're just going to bin it, or are we going to use this opportunity? So basically I came to the conclusion that I was going to forego the WNBF and see what opportunities come about within the IFBB on the natural side of things for my next season. If the opportunities are there, great. If they're not, well, you'll see me back in the WNBF stage, rocking and rolling. So that's basically where we're at. But it was very hard because I hadn't conceptualized finishing the season. I just put all this work in, and we were all gunning for this last show. And that's it's like unfinished business. It's chopped off short. But to be fair, the look I was so happy with at the Taiwan show, I think if I had deemed that not my best, could have been better, that would have been a different story. But kind of, okay, we're finishing on a high here. Be grateful. Let's get to building.
Love that. Yeah, it's funny. It somewhat reminds me of my last season where I ended up turning pro at the Netherlands with the WNBF, not expecting it at all. I already had 2 shows paid for and Airbnbs booked. Thankfully, they were all like UK based, so it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah.
But very much, I wanted to step on the Supernaturals WNBF UK stage, like particularly, and I wanted to step on the UK FBA stage again, a massive federation here in the UK, and I felt like not unfinished business, but like I wanted to present my best on their stage. But similar to you, it's like an opportunity I couldn't turn down to kind of be a pro in that regard. So I totally relate to you there, and I still had shows I could do, whereas you kind of needed to finish. But it's great that you felt like you'd presented your best on stage, which again, that's why I came back to it at the start, where it's like, yeah, congratulations on the pro card with the IFBB, but importantly, congratulations on presenting the best ever Brandon on stage, which I know for you is arguably that not even arguably, it's the most important thing.
Definitely.
So, Brandon, with the IFBB, I wasn't certain on this. The show you did, was that a natural show and you've got a natural IFBB Pro card, or is that distinct? Like, how does that side of things work? I wasn't completely aware of it.
Yeah, so this particular show was essentially both. It was a 2-day show. On Saturday was the Untested, so go your hardest. And then on Sunday was the Tested. That particular show was WADA tested. I got tested at both of the IFBB shows. But Taiwan was WADA standard. You know, I know the difference. I've been tested more times than I can count on 2 hands. And yeah, so it was tested. It wasn't poly, but I heard of the Ben Weider the year before they had polygraphed. And to be fair, the definition of a natural athlete, the abstainment period, is in the IFBB. In my opinion, a bit of a joke. But I think if they change that, which I'm hoping they do, and there's definitely some pressure to do so, that they will sort of gain a lot more respect, you know, from other natural athletes. Because right now it's a 3-year drug-free period. I mean, to me, that's a joke. You got to say at least 5 years. I love the WNBF's sort of 7-year drug-free, and we polygraph you. Obviously, polygraph's very expensive. There is limitations. It's high sensitivity, low specificity. But it looks like they're going to start doing polygraph the NPC at the highest level, so in the WEDA, and hopefully they extend that drug-free period. And if you're aware, the Ben WEDA, that requires basically you turn pro. So to do a pro qualifier, you got to. It's actually quite a process, which I kind of like. Is you have to do a regional show first, then attend a PQ. If you happen to win the overall, then you get a pro card. That if you want to do weeders, you need to win a pro category first, and then you can go to do the weeders. So that show should bring the best of the best. So that's going to be pretty cool to get amongst.
So that sounds, and I quite like, again, earning the right to get that versus just kind of like getting it. I know I've seen some, and I mean, this is a different argument, but within the IFBB, like pro cards being handed to like 2nd place, 3rd place, as well as like the winner of a class. It's like, it just feels like you don't really want that, I don't think. And I think ultimately when I see people argue about the WNBF as well, where like if there's a certain number in your category and you win that, then you get your pro card. And I think it should, for me personally, always come down to the judge's discretion. Like if the judges deem you of a pro standard, whether or not there's enough people, insufficient people in your class, like I'm less concerned about that than that person being able to stand against other pros and then be able to be successful there. But so as a natural, I don't know if you have any comments on that first of all, Brandon, go for it.
I was going to say, I totally agree with you. I'm sure you've seen this from a coaching perspective where you've had athletes of whom have turned pro too early in their career. They're not ready for it. The show wasn't as competitive as perhaps it usually is, and by virtue of that, they've essentially ruined their career. Because now they are starting from not just the bottom, but they're starting from beneath the ground because they're not of a pro standard. And that's pretty rough on an athlete. And for the sake of contextualization, when it comes to pro card availability, you know, when I started bodybuilding at 19 years old, there was the IMBA, that's essentially the only place that you get a pro card. There was nowhere in Australia to do it. You had to go to the States and you had to do the University Olympia. Now, at 19 years old, I set out with the intention of getting a pro card before I turned 26. You know, that's 7 years. I sat down and went, I've got a 7-year timeline. If I could do it before 26, man, I'd be stoked. So I was looking that far ahead. And I don't know that many 19-year-olds these days who are looking that far ahead. Like, I want to get a pro card. I'm like, okay. I mean, there's just so much more availability now than there used to be. So I totally agree with that.
Yeah, I think it's then on the coach, hopefully, or again, it's a part of maybe on the federation too, to educate that person on whether that is the route they want to go down. Because, again, once you've accepted it and then you're, like you said, if you're not even like of a standard of a true pro, like you're not just bottom of the rung, you're now there's amateurs that are potentially even superior to you there, and that can be tough. And so, not helping you in your long-term career, and it could just lead to you wanting to like give up at the end of the day and not continue moving forward. And also just that experience element of like going out and placing in like top threes, winning more shows. Like, I think that's good for someone to also kind of get under their belt, and just as a like enjoyer of competing.
Agreed. And just doing badly local shows, because once you turn pro, you're oftentimes limited to either going to the capital of your country or even going internationally, depending on what's available.
Yeah. With the pro card you've got then, just so I'm sure, when you move forward, are you competing against other natural IFBB pros? Is that what it is for you? It's an IFBB natural league. You're not in like the open, the route isn't now the Olympia type of deal. Like, you aren't up against that.
Yeah, so I will be up against other natural athletes. I don't see the point in getting up against us guys. Let's be honest. Those sort of products are really effective. And, it's akin to a go-kart versus Formula One. I could be the fastest go-kart in there, man, but I'm the Formula One car. So I know basically they're starting a natural league. And they're going to be putting a lot more shows on the cars for next year. So there'll be some more availability. New Zealand has had a IFBB natural for quite some time. So obviously UK as well with the... I can't remember the affiliate there, but they've been going for some time. But it's really perforated through Southeast Asia. Obviously, living in Asia, I'm very passionate about Asia and bodybuilding in Asia. This is wild. Perhaps a little bit biased, but we're seeing some pretty cool things. But yes, I will be up against other naturals. Yeah.
I think our main affiliate is the PCA. I think you've I've forgotten the name now. I've competed against him, your client. He did a show this season, right? Leon, there you go. Sorry. Yeah, completely lost his name. But yeah, he did a PCA show, and they've got some natural shows where you can kind of go and take IFBB Pro cards down that natural route. So it's exciting to see that grow. I know some people are less excited about it, and I would like your perspective here, where some people are like, hey, the IFBB, these untested shows, they haven't supported natural bodybuilding like until late, and maybe they're just there for like a quick win, just finances, get money, they can see the natural side growing. And so some of the, normally it's like, I would say people who have been in this game a bit longer, maybe the older heads in this space, they think, hey, you shouldn't put your finances and your money and your kind of entry fees to these guys. You should just put that towards the guys that have always funded tested bodybuilding. Obviously, you've now competed in untested shows, so that kind of gives me some sort of perspective. But how do you feel about that argumentation?
Well, I mean, it's valid. It's definitely valid. The WMBF, for example, has been pushing natural bodybuilding for a very, very long time, and they've done really well with it. Yeah, and I've definitely copped a little bit on both sides. Congratulations for your pro card. Other people saying, like, how could you turn your back from one week to the next on, a federation or series of other federations of which you've been competing with for 13 years now. To me, it's a little bit of novelty, to be totally honest. It's something fresh for me to compete in. Competed in WMBF for a long time, and same with IMBA and ICN and AMB. Wonderful, so something fresh. And I'm just interested to see what they can offer. Right now, there's not a huge amount of opportunity, but I know there will be next year. That Ben Weider, which kind of represents the pinnacle of, it's kind of like you could call it the Olympia for the natural IFBB guys in Washington, is the peak, and that's sort of the next season, which I'll be going for at the kind of end of next year. See what happens.
I think I saw Eric Salazar. I don't know if you know Eric. he has been on the podcast. He worked, I think James Krieger actually took him to stage. He like wore the weighted vest and that sort of things, and those experiments have gone well for him. I think he did really well at the Weider, but he's definitely competed at the Ben Weider as well. But he's about one of the only people I'm aware that's like done that, who I've seen. But yeah, I go for it.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I know of him, and yeah, great physique. I just think there's going to be more opportunity coming out soon.
Yeah, I think, and I'm along the same lines of you, as in terms of, at least the way I see it, is there's a reason why people are competing with those federations and doing those shows. And I think it's, yes, I can understand why we should still, as natural competitors, put our money where our mouth is and support the people who have always supported us and given that avenue to compete, which I completely respect and have a lot of time for. But I think it's also upon the tested federations to look at what have the untested guys been doing, why are kind of naturals wanting to go and compete with them, what are they doing that we can learn from to upscale what we're doing. And I think we mentioned that right at the start, right, where it's not necessarily untested versus tested, but it is what are the people that are attracting a lot of competitors doing right to attract that person. Let's level up the playing field. And so I think the other probably argument you could make is that with the IFBB having these natural shows, they're highlighting, and they're like, what's it called? A rising tide raises all ships type of deal. So people will see, the IFBB have natural shows. Now they start Googling natural bodybuilding, and then they'll see like a Babacar or like top naturals like yourself, Brandon. And then they'll be like, oh, these guys have competed with the WMBF, and then they'll find them as well. And maybe they'll, after a bit more research, especially if that 3-year rule sticks around, I can see a lot of naturals just being like, hey man, that 3 years that's a deal breaker for me.
Yeah, and honestly, I've been very vocal about that in the past. It's a couple of a reel that I put out a little while back about kind of what defines a natural bodybuilder, and I did mention the IFBB's definition, like, man, it's a joke, and I do stand by that. It is pretty rubbish. But I mean, if they change that, which there's talk of, then I think that would bring a lot more credibility. Yeah.
And I think the thing that's been highlighted, at least in the UK recently, was that the PCA, talking of the PCA, they recently caught 2 cheaters who failed urine tests. I think one was for like clenbuterol, one was for like some sort of SARM. And again, I think it's great that clearly they're testing and then they're publicizing it. So that's kind of like that. The testing is what makes like natural bodybuilding natural, right? Without the testing, it's just like you're taking people at their word, and that's no good. And clearly these bigger federations have more money behind them. So actually the opportunity for the best would be off-season testing, right? And so it's kind of like, man, if that's happening as well, it could actually be a really great place for natural bodybuilding, but they have to ultimately also probably learn from the tested feds, like you said, the WMBF having years upon years, or like I think it's 10 years drug-free to be competing with them. So I think they should learn that way too.
I will say, by the way, the WMBF at the weekend did off-season testing. A couple of the pros attended for coaching. Yeah, cool. Yep. By the way, to the back room, and I thought, oh, okay, cool. That was really lovely to see. Okay, it happens there, which is wonderful. So I mean, credit where it's due to them too.
For sure. Something I think would be amazing to touch on outside of obviously like where you're going forward is talking about where you've come from in regards to, it's been since 2019 you stood on stage. That was the last time, which is crazy to think it's been that long, but you gained over 4 kilos of stage weight, and so clearly over like a pound a year, as someone in 2019 already like very highly competitive, by all means advanced amongst elite natural bodybuilder. What do you put as the reason why you've been able to continue to grow and develop your physique, where some people might think, hey, Brandon, you've reached your natty limit?
Yeah, so we broke up for a little moment there, but look, it was a really long period between, a little bit longer than I had originally anticipated. I don't know if you want to go into that, but I mean, originally I'd planned to take an 18-month off season, come back again for the WMBF, but COVID precluded that. and then ended up taking another degree and moving country, getting married, etc. But throughout that process, I just focused on doing the do. And in particular, when we moved to Indonesia, it's actually quite fascinating because I do live kind of out of town and a bit disconnected from a lot of society, but it just affords me the ability to just dial in and focus on the process. And that's always been my piece, just focus on doing the do. Don't bring ego to the game, just focus on the process and consistently depositing progress in the bank. And I was able to do that over that duration. And I do believe the contest prep was also overall more successful from the perspective of lean mass retainment. So it was a double piece there. Put on more muscle in the off season, retain more in the contest preparation, achieve similar conditioning, present a more competitive physique overall. And it ended up at 4.2 up. Maybe a touch more. I changed my scales and the new scales were a little bit lighter, but I don't want to toot my own horn, but it definitely made a significant difference to the look of the physique, particularly in the front and side profile.
Yeah, you were absolutely dramatically improved. And I think if I'm interpreting what you're saying there right, it sounds similar to the way I've always approached off seasons is just kind of focusing on the process, on the things that we can be pretty confident is leading to muscle growth. And because it's such a slow process, you can't keep checking. Like in a fat loss phase, you can check every few weeks. Am I getting leaner? Is the scale going down? But in an off season, you kind of just have to have trust in that process of what we know. Okay, we're given the hypertrophic stimulus from the resistance training. We're pushing ourselves very hard. I'm feeling pretty damn beat up most of the time. And I'm fueling that with my nutrition, taking care of variables outside of the gym with sleep and all of that. And just embracing that enjoyment versus, am I there yet? Am I there yet? And only now and then do you kind of, I guess it's like putting a cake in the oven and then you take it out eventually once it should be well baked and checking. And I guess there were probably moments, I imagine you had moments where you weren't sure if that investment was paying off, but as you dieted, I expect at least for this season, there was probably a time of which a number of weeks out, you were like, yeah, this is an all new, well improved Brandon.
Yeah. I mean, look, in the off season, like you said, it is a slow process. I will say that, I personally love training, so that's never an issue in the off season, and the manner of which I've set up my life is conducive to basically streamlining everything. So to me, it's a very simple way of doing things, and or a simple existence, let's just say. My wife's also an avid bodybuilder, and that means we sort of come together and everything moves like a well-oiled machine. People stay with us who are bodybuilders like, wow, you do have like scales here and the scales there, and then everything just goes bang, bang, bang. It's like, yes, it's simple, it's easy. We've been doing this for a decade. We've curated everything. And in the off season, there was moments there where I wasn't entirely sure how much progress had been made, but looking across my lifts, for example, it's like, hey, I'm significantly stronger. We start to get into the dieting phase, and I'm looking at my training logs from my last season. I'm like, wow, man, I'm lifting 20% more in this. You're going to tell me that doesn't have transfer to increase muscle mass? And then I'm looking at the physique at, say, 5 weeks out, and it's like, wow, a lot of the gap's been filled. Cool. We've accrued the interest, and it's paying dividends. Yeah,
and I think that's the difference between someone who has that almost limiting belief of, I've hit my natural ceiling, and they then start getting complacent in their off season. They don't really take control of those, crossing those T's, dotting those I's, and they've kind of, and then they do, ultimately, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Why can't I speak? So it fulfills itself because you think, I've hit my natty limit, and then all your actions behave in a way to keep you there. Whereas if you have a growth mindset, like you clearly have, you just enjoy the process of just like, hey, this is just fun, good stuff. It again, is self-fulfilling.
Absolutely. I mean, look, I am a logical human. I understand there is a ceiling somewhere, but do I think I've reached it? No. To accept that I have reached it is to admit defeat. And I do look at natural bodybuilding through sort of the lifespan, like wringing out a sponge. You're a novice. It doesn't require much effort to wring water out of the sponge. right now, it's a disproportionate effort investment per unit of progress. But if you love the process enough, then you can really dig your heels into it and stick with it for long enough to wring out every last drop. And that's my intention. You know, I'm, as I would define in my prime years now, in my early 30s, I'm going to keep wringing out this sponge for as long as I can. And that's part of the reason I want to get more runs on the board competing wise. I want to get 18 months, which is, you know, basically a 2-to-1 ratio, 2 times the off season for 1 part contest prep, which is the shortest I would go ever. But I want to start getting some runs on the board before, we potentially start a family / my body says no. So, yeah.
That makes sense. I guess actually that opens up, and I love the analogy of kind of, trying to get every bit of water out of the sponge. Or I think about like a tube of toothpaste, and like I'm always surprised when I'm getting towards the end of the tube that I can keep getting a little bit out, because I probably need to go to the supermarket and buy some new ones, but I'm like, oh no, there's still more there, and I just need to press it in a slightly different area or whatever it is. And it's the same kind of, it's very analogous to being kind of doing this for a decade plus. So that opens up the question of next steps then, actually, because you mentioned a 2-to-1 ratio. Does that mean you're looking at 2027 to compete? Is that the next time you're looking at?
I'm actually looking more towards the end of next year, which is a really short off season. I'm not entirely sure how much progress we made, but I will say that this contest preparation I've just done has been significantly less disruptive from a physiological perspective than my previous contest preparations. There's a variety of things that contribute to that, which I'm happy to share. A lot of difference to the contest prep itself, and definitely in the peaking strategies also. But by virtue of that, recovery-wise, at this section here, I'm feeling a whole lot better than I would have in my previous preps. So I'm hoping to be in a very productive position from the perspective of an off-season very soon, and make some tangible progression leading to the coming year. Because again, I want to get runs on the board now, and there is an opportunity to do the Ben Weider show in Washington DC at the sort of back end of next year, it's November, I believe. Be a short qualification show just before that. So you're basically looking at, it's just under a year and a half, so it's pretty short. So we're going to make every week count.
I would love to hear a little bit more about what you described there in terms of, again, obviously part of competing is when you're dieting, you're not like improving necessarily. There's some people do, but especially at the level of advancement you are, the chances of you growing muscle and getting better during a prep is slim. And then when you're recovering out, again, you're recovering. It's not improving. But the quicker you can make either part, like the prep and then the recovery, like the sooner you're going to be in your improvement phase again. So it sounds like you've been able to get that turnaround much quicker. And you referenced peaking and a variety of factors. I'd love to hear about that. That would be great.
So like within the contest preparation, there's a few differences from last season to now, to this season, pardon me. One of which is the starting position. I ensured that I was within 15% of stage weight, and I was pretty much bang on for a 28-week prep. I often, and I've presented on this topic in the past, putting in place a polyphasic contest preparation that encompasses a faster rate of loss at the start and a tapering at the back end, based on a logical basis that we can liberate the ceiling to the volume of energy we can liberate per unit of fat mass per unit of time. More fat mass, we can manage a larger energy deficit whilst preserving the amino acid pool. And conversely, less body fat, we need to reduce the energy deficit to not risk protein degradation. So breaking down muscle mass. And that's exactly how we went. Hard, fast start, and then from 3 months out, I essentially averaged 233 grams per week, and it wasn't linear, of course. As part of that, I was refeeding quite frequently, oftentimes, majority kind of prep 2 times, but there was quite frequent occasions where we were running up towards sort of 3, and it was really a matter of pushing and pulling, dip the toes in the deficit, deplete enough to liberate energy substrates, and then basically top up, preserve peripheral nutrient partitioning, preserve trainability. And it was really a matter of titrating this every sort of 3 to 7 days, and it was a really cool process, and I've diarized it from start to finish. And alongside that those components. One of the other things which is non-negotiable this contest prep was intra-workout carbohydrate. I think we spoke on this at one point.
Yeah.
And from start to finish, that was just part of my masters. We did a lot of with the carbohydrate mouth rinse studies. That was around that period of time. So throughout this prep, from start to finish, there was carbohydrate in play. The lowest I got, I think, was down to 18 grams of carbohydrate intra-training, but it stayed in place regardless.
Nice. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I think a lot of people get confused about kind of rate of loss during contest preps, and I think when you just break it down in those simple terms of when you have more to lose body fat wise, you can lose it at a faster rate. When there's less, you can lose less. But a lot of people don't set themselves up smartly where they then can lose less and they kind of have to speed up towards the end. You never want a sprint finish, which a lot of people get into, which is unfortunate. And so that makes tons of sense. And the refeeding makes sense too. And then the intra-workout carbs, which, yes, we touched on last time, I think that totally makes sense. And if you can justify them and afford them and adhere to the rest of the day of eating, I think I like intra-workout carbohydrates a lot. With your peaking approach, how did that change and look? Because you mentioned that helped with this kind of turnaround being a bit faster as well.
Yeah, so I mean, look, coming into basically the hardest part of contest prep for me was around 5 weeks out from the first show. I was in the pits there, and you're just doing what you need to do. And after that, the refeed frequency came up. I felt a little bit more human in general. The peaking strategy coming to shows was pretty simple. We ran a bit of a mid-load of sorts and essentially played it day by day. There was some more extreme manipulation of sodium on the show day, not from a depletion perspective, but from the manner in which we loaded it, particularly coming into the second show, which was a split day. So there was some pretty nifty updates on that front, which I can get to in a moment. But essentially by the time I got to the stage, the magnitude of the energy deficit was quite small. And that meant my trainability had come up, my appetite came down, my perceived energy had increased, not to the point where you're bouncing any issues with energy like in the middle of an off season, but significantly sort of climbed down the hole, if you will, compared to previous. And I do think coming into this recovery phase, it's part of the reason why my appetite's been more manageable. Furthermore, I will say that in the contest preparation, I was very diligent, another piece here, very diligent with managing the palatability of my food. I kept things very plain. Even if we're looking at sort of sodium, for example, I was strategic with allocating my sodium in the peri-workout window for hydration and managing blood plasma volume. On many occasions, I didn't add it to food, I added it to fluid because I didn't want to increase the palatability of my food. I want to keep palatability exceptionally low, reduce hedonic power. Just to build upon that, it was actually very easy for me being out of town. Being out of town with limited resources or limited access to a lot of like the hyper palatable goods that you would have in a well-developed area. I was eating just basics, fruit, my veg, etc. Quality food selection made life very easy. Would you like to go into some peaky stuff on for the last show day? Up to you.
Yeah, that'll be very interesting.
Cool, sorry. But yeah, so the last show was a split show, which is often the way with the IFBB. So it was a morning show followed by the finals. If you make the top, I think it was top 5, something like that. So I was on stage at 8 o'clock and another stage at 3 o'clock. So that was a really early start. Essentially involved loading up around 400 grams of carbs in the first category, and pushing in sodium quite high. I think I was running at just over 4,000 milligrams of sodium coming into the first category. Then after that, basically, we pushed fluids up to increase diuresis, get rid of some of the sodium we consumed. Also concomitantly pushed in some more potassium, kind of rebalance a little bit. And then coming into the category at the end of the day, I was able to push sodium back up again and acutely dose carbohydrate. And collectively, that allowed me to bring my best to that second showing. That was definitely the best look by far.
Very cool. Yeah, I think it's people overestimate the role of carbohydrates on show days and really underestimate the role of like electrolytes basically and fluid balance, and don't pay attention enough to that, and pay way too much attention to, like, I don't know, if they're running flat on show day, they're like, yeah, pound a bunch of rice cases, like, but it could be sodium that's there, or you're underhydrated, could be that element of things. So I love that description of how you kind of manipulate it on show day, and that's one of the best utilities of that, I think. And it makes a lot of sense also managing palatability. I think it does take I don't know, it's like having ego in the gym or not, like where you can not progress loads too quickly because you want to, because that's bodybuilding, it's progressive overload, but knowing that maybe you shouldn't always, you should hold back at times. Maybe similar with palatability, it's like in a diet phase, it's quite easy, you could like salt foods, or you could, I don't know, add a little bit of sweetener here or there, but at the same time you're not sure if tomorrow and future you is going to be as happy, because you're potentially going to be a bit more food focused and hungry. So it does take a certain leveled headedness to be able to do that.
It certainly does. You know, someone said to me, man, you're a sadist. Like, why would you make your food so plain? I want to enjoy it. And I said to him, have you ever dieted at this level? Like, plain rice is enjoyable, man. You know,
Yeah.
I'm happy. Trust me. Do I want to make what tastes good even better? No. I want to keep it simple. And I don't want to be in the kitchen any more than I need to. And I don't want to be thinking about food any more than I need to. Let's keep it at that.
Did you use any protein powders? That intra workout, was that flavored like dextrose or anything in there, or was that just plain dextrose, salt, water? Did you keep that real plain?
That is one area I did. So for my whey protein, I was down to 15 grams at one point. That was pretty much it. So that's all the palatability there. For my intra workout, that has some sweetness to it. That was either coconut water, Bakari Sweat, which is basically like a Southeast Asian version of like Gatorade, or I would just buy these basically it's like cordial sachets from the side of the street, buy for about 5 cents, and mix up 2 of those. You've got 18 grams of carbohydrate there, and the salt goes in there, and Bob's your uncle. So yeah, there's a bit of palatability there, but that's about it.
And then am I right in thinking, so you don't cut out artificial sweeteners? Do you do that, any manipulations like that during your peak at all? Because I think I saw a story, you said you're having like a Sprite Zero or Coke Zero here or there as well within the diet. You allowed those?
Yes, I did. Honestly, Coke. So I don't actually drink soft drink in the off season. I don't like Coke, but in contest prep I do like Coke.
Of course.
Yeah. So I did consume a fair bit of Sprite Zero and Coke, certainly. And that's probably the most sort of palatable piece that I had. But I did, for my first show, I'd pull that out the day before. But then coming in my second show, it was more sort of, I don't generally have any gastrointestinal irritation. So, you know, maybe 2 o'clock the day before, okay, my last 250 milligram tin of Coke, and we'll call it there. Super simple. But yeah, I personally have no issue with it.
And with your peaking approach, I gather from what you mentioned, there was no kind of severe depletion, water loading, anything like that going on. You kept it pretty simple, and then kind of, it sounded fairly simple, like mostly manipulation of carbohydrates the days leading in, and then show day was the sodium manipulation most of all.
Yeah, look, the number one thing, as I always put it, when it comes to peaking, is I want predictability. I think most people put themselves in a pretty crap position when it comes to peaking, either because they're playing with variables they shouldn't, or they're playing with variables that could contribute to the look positively, but at magnitudes of which just ludicrous. So I didn't deplete. Basically, I simply ran up my carbohydrate coming into the show. It was somewhat non-linear based on look on a day-to-day basis, and sodium remained stable throughout, no changes on that front. Potassium was relatively stable as well. By the end of contest preparation, if you're not hydrated, I'm very surprised going to the bathroom 10 times per day because you're trying to get some stretch receptor stimulation with, you know, some calorie-free water. I don't think most people need to hyperhydrate. I'm still going to need someone who can actually, it's not going to happen. So again, we were looking at predictability. So really all we did is modulate carbohydrate primarily in the days leading to the show. And on the show day, we drive up potassium in particular. Drive up sodium in particular. And if we have sort of a dual load, then we may bump potassium as a rebalance in between, just to simply give the body the tools it needs to regulate fluid balance. But it's nothing extreme, nothing that's dangerous, nothing that's intended to sort of thwart homeostasis. Rather, we're here to support it.
I really like how you describe that. I do think it's when, people try and trick the body in some way, and it's like, the body is very smart. It's very good at balancing things out. I can remember in my 2021 season and traveling to WNBF Worlds in Vegas, and my diet was something like I couldn't get my diet foods that I'd been having all prep because they just weren't available, and didn't have a microwave because of the venue that we had available, which is another thing, right? So I was kind of like trying to work out where was my potassium, how can I get my potassium that high, because I didn't have access to potatoes. So I have to eat this many bananas. Anyway, I went through I even thought about buying a potassium supplement. And I spoke to Greg Potter, who you might have heard on the podcast before, super bright guy. And he was just like, your body is really smart at balancing things out. Like, you really didn't need to overthink it as much as you do. But when you're in peak week and you're thinking at that level, I was coaching myself. So I definitely got a bit stressed out and was trying to keep like this potassium and sodium ratio to this like precise number. It's like, probably don't need to stress those things too much as long as you don't get out in crazy extremes.
Yeah. I mean, if you're 4 times outside of norms, I would say, you're probably going to see something here. But yeah, I mean, look, I'm really big on, broadly speaking, myself with athletes, just predictability. Obviously, it's a really tough spot if you don't have the food availability you would usually have. Thankfully, in my scenario, given I live in Southeast Asia, moving around Southeast Asia, I eat simple foods, therefore it was really pretty simple transition. But even going to the United States, as you probably experienced, you can do a lot with the microwave, man. I cooked everything for 3 weeks in a microwave. You can make it work for sure.
Yeah, I was weird. I had to even try and bargain my hotel for like a fridge to have in the room. So like that's all I had, a fridge and like I don't even know if I had a kettle or whatever. So I was eating oats but raw, and I was like, I don't know if my digestion is going to be too happy about this. It's kind of playing with things. I think I had a friend who had a microwave. Shout out to them. They let me microwave some potatoes, but I was like traveling between rooms. It wasn't ideal, but you make it work. And you realize that again, the body is smart as long as, again, you don't go wild with variables, try and manipulate too much. And I like that peaking approach. I think the longer I've done this, the more peaks and things I've played around with, the more I come back to that. We want a predictable look. We already want you weeks out to look like you could step on stage like that and be in a great spot and be competitive. It is the final finishing sprinkles on the cake. Let's not try and do too much and too dramatic. And I agree with you. If you don't have to do like a real hard deplete and things like this, then coming out the transition afterwards is much more simple. So one of the least favorite things I know with me and Cliff when we peaked was the fluid manipulation, because I'd get this cotton mouth for days after competing and still be peeing like a racehorse because of diuresis just being so ramped up. And it was not fun.
Wow.
I was peeing on the streets of New York, like just like every half an hour. I was just like, Mike, sorry. I was traveling with Mike Chalice. I was like, Mike, I gotta go pee. He was like, well, you're just gonna pee in the street? I'm like, I have to. Okay, gone like I'm gonna whip myself.
Wow.
Not ideal.
Yeah. But makes for a good story.
Yes, definitely. Brandon, I know, so we mentioned your previous, long time away from the stage, and an area you really focused on, I know, was chest in particular, and then also calves were a kind of gap in the physique, which you brought up both for sure. Now going into this slightly shorter, truncated off season, is there particular areas you're focusing on? I know you recently posted some of your training. You said rear delts. You've kind of having a bit more of a focus on that to fill that hole. Is there any areas you've identified in the physique where you're like, they just need a bit of a touch up? I'm going to focus on that.
Yeah, definitely. It really appears that my front profile, which used to be my strongest, is probably my weakest now. So I'm definitely focusing more on lateral delts, particularly the posterior lateral fibers. So I'm very big on upright rows because obviously it is the posterior lateral fibers that give a lot of width to the front profile because the shoulders are internally rotated and the front lat spread, front symmetry, etc. So I do need more mass on that. As an adjunct, I need more upper pec, in part for my side profile, but also for my frontal bicep. I have a bit of a dip up the top here once my arms come up, so I need to correct for that as quickly as possible. And outside of that, we're going to grow across the board. I still think these calves could use some more size, but we'll really focus on broad mass. My rear profile's a strong piece, but the comment everyone has is more back. Not specifically with me, but just in general, like you can't have too much back, so I do want to bring that up some more. But it really comes down to upper pec, posterior lateral fibers, the delt, really going to hammer down on those. And the side tricep used to be very weak. That's come up a lot. I think a bit more tricep there would be great as well.
Yeah, I think it's interesting when you're at the level you're at, when you turn pro, especially like within a really strong federation like the IFBB, the physique is already so good and so well balanced because it has to be at that level. So it's like anything you're adding, people would look at your physique, they'd be like, what do you mean like a small crevice in your like front, like your upper chest, or like a little bit on that posterior delt, or that your front shot is at all weak? It's like everything is just wildly strong. It's like when people try and critique like the people at the Olympia, it's like everyone there is like the top of the top. How can you even? But when you're yourself, you know those small things, you can pick apart those small details, which people wouldn't expect to make that big of a change. But when you then see it the next year, like you'll be like, yeah, the physique, it's hard to even sometimes like see it and like identify it very clearly, but you just glance at the physique, it's like, yeah, it's apparent that kind of deficit has now been covered.
Yeah, we're splitting hairs. It's splitting hairs, just like you said. Everyone is on at the highest level, and the closest competitor that I had on the day was a gentleman from Korea, of whom, I'm doing some work with now towards the next pro qualifier for him. Nobis is a lovely guy, phenomenal physique. His front profile, I was like, man, I reckon he had me on that. His just delts were so beautiful. But then you turn to the side and it was like, I had a tiny bit more hamstring there. And then I had a little bit more arm to match my pecs, whereas he had really nice pecs, but his biceps a little bit small. And the rear profile, it was like, he's got slightly higher lat insertion, so he needs a lot of mass to make that back profile look, really complete. And it's really just like, he was one up, I was one down, I was one up, and some with average points said me. But, you're splitting hairs. It's that kind of level of detail. And I think you could have been Bumstead in his last year and like, yeah, I'll find something to improve upon. But again, that's the part of the fun. It's the off-season strategy. This is a game of chess, man. We're looking 3 moves ahead at all times, and I love that.
It's those milliseconds that count in like the 100-meter sprint. Like it just, they matter. They seemingly, you wouldn't even be able to observe the difference between two sprinters, but one person won, the other person came second. Like those things, those fine details matter, which is why, again, some people like to say peak week doesn't matter. It's like, well, it does. And if you can get a little extra percentage points, it could make all the difference. So you do want to take care of that. And so, I definitely agree with you there. Is there anything else this off season or improvement season, as I would like to say? I think it's important to actually have that differentiator, especially for yourself, Brandon, that you're working on improving or developing even outside of kind of your bodybuilding.
I mean, look, outside of my personal bodybuilding, I'll definitely continue focusing on our athletes. I suppose zooming out the sort of legacy that I want to leave in this industry, I want to be more than just an athlete. I'd like to leave an imprint, a positive imprint on the industry by lifting others up. And honestly, coaching is one of my biggest joys in life, and it's an absolute blessing to have the opportunity to be able to contribute to the next sort of generation of bodybuilders. Myself, Daniel, and my fiance, wife now, because we got to put that in there. Dr. Rachel, we only work with bodybuilders, and our sort of, even when we're in, we're dieting ourselves, etc. That remains the centerpiece. It's a separate hat to put on and take off, our coaching / being an athlete. But that's definitely going to be a big focus point over the next while. We've got some phenomenal athletes gracing the stage throughout, all over now. So yeah.
Love that. And actually, I don't know why it's just coming to my head, but I think similar to me, coaching is your bread and butter. It's the thing you focus on. I've tried, and Revive Stronger, we've tried going down other avenues of different projects and things like this, but I've always just come back to, I love coaching. This is what I do. And I just want to get better. And similarly to you, I just love working with people and being able to get the most out of them. I think you'd be a great person to ask this question. Have you utilized any, I know this is like complete, it feels like a tangent, any artificial intelligence within your coaching? And do you see, has it changed anything for you so far? And do you see it changing anything for you in future?
Look, I'm yet to use AI from a coaching perspective. And look, it might be a limitation of mine in the future. I'm a little bit sort of anti-AI. I'm a little bit kind of scared of it, if you will, in that I believe that it can be really good and it can be really horrible. And hear me out. So I think that if used incorrectly, broadly speaking, I think you're going to have a generation of very stupid, superficial learners. Because for me to say collate all the information as part of my master's project takes a hell of a long time. 40 hours of reading, etc. I become a subject expert, whereas if fast information is information easily lost, and that concerns me, being reliant on something like that, just speaking in broad generalities. So, but if used correctly, it can give you access to information that you couldn't before, and if you still participate in deep learning, you can be a true expert yourself and use it to your advantage. But from a business perspective, I haven't utilized it. All of my check-ins personally are done through very much like yours, through recording. There's not really, maybe you could use AI to sort of summarize data. But no, it's just said simply, I haven't used it. I may be getting left behind, but the thing is this. The way I coach, it's not about volume, it's about quality. I hear these guys talk about working with like 100 people. I'm like, I can't work with 100 people, not the depth I do. It's impossible. And I'm really content with the level of productivity I have. So I haven't sort of pushed the AI button for productivity just yet.
Yeah, I think that makes so much sense. And I think it's very much, at the moment, at least as I see it, as like a business owner and a coach, it's a tool which I can use to help me with some things. Like, hey, I'm going to use it here with this podcast. It's going to help me edit it and put it together and get me a kind of a description going and timestamps. Thank God it has that a capability, and that's definitely going to help me. But with working with clients, like it can't do my job at the moment. And I think it's really short-sighted. I just did a story on this the other day, and actually you'd responded to it, where it's a case of someone saying, hey, coaches are going to be out of business soon because AI can do everything you can do. It can write a program, it can adjust like calories, all of this sort of thing. I was just like, it's so short-sighted, because the role of the coach, like, it's not an information problem. The information is out there. It's kind of understanding how to apply that to the person and get the most from them. And a lot of it is psychology, empathy, listening, and trying to troubleshoot for their given situation. And I just can't see an AI bot being something that a person is going to be like, being able to relate to and adhere to in the same way. They're like, no, I want to talk to Brandon because Brandon's my guy. And I chose Brandon as my coach because, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of coaches who might have similar levels of competitive history and success with clients, but I like the way Brandon talks. I like the way he represents himself, and I just get on with this guy. I struggle to see that in the near future, at least. But with all these things, I think I saw something about mobile phones. It was like when the mobile phone first came out, everyone was just like, oh, it's just going to be nothing. And it's like, well, that transformed our lives. So it might be the same thing here, where you can't quite understand the impact it could have in future, but it'd be interesting to say.
We will see, but I definitely one thing I've really noticed on social media, I'm sure you have as well, is that unrefined content, imperfect content is actually in vogue now, because it's less likely to be AI generated. You know, it's perfectly curated. You're like, oh, this could be a bit, you know, if I'm talking to you in a check-in and there's an or an or something happens there, you're like, oh, actually, you know, I very much know that this is a real person. And that means, you know, they share the same struggles and the same, you know, challenges that I do. Okay, cool. I mean, to be fair, AI could probably learn that too, but we're going to have to see.
Yeah. Absolutely. Brandon, this has been a great chat. By the way, I definitely think you're leaving your mark on the industry. I think you already have. And I think you will continue to build that as an IFBB Pro. And I'm excited to see where you go with that. I'm excited to see where the IFBB go with that. And I'll definitely be keeping an eye on everything that you're up to. And it's always great talking to you and talking through these aspects, because I really respect your opinion and respect your approach. If people want to keep up to date with you, with your improvement season and where you're going to be taking it with the IFBB, where should they be heading? And also, obviously, your coaching.
Oh, cheers. Well, you can find me on Instagram at Brandon Kempter. One of these days, I'll update my profile, IFBB Pro. Haven't, but maybe by the time you hear this,
I noticed you hadn't.
Yeah. I think it's, I feel a little bit weird about it. I'm like, am I tooting my own horn? Anyway. But you can find me on Instagram at Brandon Kempter, and obviously all of our details there for our coaching at BK Conditioning is also there as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Brandon. I'll make sure that's linked in the description below. And guys, we'll catch you in the next one. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.